Okay.
All right, we'll call the meeting to order. Alan, you want to lead us in the pledge of allegiance?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we're gonna rearrange the agenda a little bit here, so some people that need to leave can speak before they have to take off. You wanna do some kind of announcement first? Uh-oh, he's on the phone.
something to have that come in. Anyway. Now I don't know. Okay, basically, we received 3 bids for the pool. We ended up with a low bidder, and unfortunately, the low bidder was higher than the amount of money that we actually have at the moment in order to go forward with the pool project. We're short $158,000 to make it simple, and that's if we were to use everything that the town has put aside, using some good neighbor fund monies, we still are short. So, you know, being that this is nearly, I think, the 3rd time at least we've been at this point, this is the closest we've ever been to being able to put this pool into, reality. The pool is a 50 by 50, 3 foot to 8 foot deep pool, very similar to a very basic pool, no bells and whistles. We have a 15 by 20 kiddie pool, a bathhouse, fencing, nothing that's extreme or anything out of the ordinary, just a very simple pool. And it still is coming in over what we had put aside. There's, there is a long history as to where we've been and how we got here. I'm not gonna spend all that time tonight going through all of that. Some of you are fully aware of where we've been. You've worked on this going on 15 years. And it's very disappointing to me that we've arrived at this point, and now we're faced with making a decision to possibly turn all the bids back and figure out what we're doing next, or I don't know. As far as the board is concerned, I can only speak for myself. I know we've all been going, Chris and I have spent all day and yesterday and all weekend trying to figure out how we could possibly make this happen and do it right. As a councilman for the town of Delhi, it's hard for me to say I'm gonna vote to put, a project in motion that doesn't have all its funding. I have an issue with that. I have to do what's right for the taxpayers, not what I think. And I can't say I can sit here and gamble. So, I know we have a lot of people here tonight with varied interests, and I think, personally, I'd like to hear what some of them have to say. If the committee would like to speak, anybody from the committee, I think it's important, to have everybody understand where we are and so on. So, I would like to open the floor for questions at this point, or anyone who may want to speak to the issue.
I would just ask that you try to keep it to 5 minutes or less, to give everybody a chance, and then if we have more questions, we can get into it in more depth. But who would like to start off? Chris, you wanna start it off?
I will speak on behalf of the pool, myself being a pool committee member, and what I've been through, and where we are, and what I believe. As Al said, we've been at this for a long time. I will admit one thing, we have a bad marketing problem with the pool committee, okay? And a lack of information has been given to the public. And I'll apologize for that. It doesn't mean that we haven't been trying, and it doesn't mean that we haven't been making every attempt. In the last 3 years, we have come farther than we had at any previous time. Trying 3 different bids and failing on another attempt with the threat of a possibility of a lawsuit. I believe this project is an important project for Delhi. I have spent a fair amount of my adult life involved with the youth of Delhi. And anything that we can do for the youth is important. I believe we need this project for a number of reasons. One in particular, that our community needs to offer something to families, okay, to young families out there. We need to become more attractive to young families to move into this area so we can grow and become more vibrant. I think this is a good stepping stone and a good starting spot. I will say to the board that there are other opportunities out there for additional funds. My biggest concern is if we do not proceed today, we're a year to 2 years before a shovel goes in the ground. There are other opportunities out there, other grant opportunities that are available that I believe that we can fund the remaining amount of the pool with. I'm hoping tonight that the town can make a decision to proceed with this project and task all of the pool committee and all of the members of the boards to reach out there and find those sources and make this project a realistic. You know, the governor wants us to have shared services. I see this as a perfect opportunity for the village and the town to pull together to find those opportunities to help fund this project and get this off the ground.
Thanks, Chris.
I need to make this one.
Okay. Al's gotta make a phone call, we're gonna take a 5-minute break.
How are you? You on?
I'm gonna tell everybody what I'm thinking. I'm out of 5 minutes when he comes back.
When somebody else is there. You know, first thing that comes to mind is 50 by 50. Just a 40 by 40.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of times I'm going to an auto place to buy a car and walk out with what I hope for. But you walk out with what you can afford. You know, 50 by 50 is nice, but maybe 50 by 40. We're talking about 100% of the line here.
He says that he wasn't doing well on Christmas Day.
It just sounds to me like it shouldn't be a year or two away. We just took a couple of quarters.
Right.
Still break down this, you know, there's also, you know, pavilion or whatever they're calling it, the bathhouse.
Yeah.
I mean, you can just put that, add that on later, or
That's
make
what
it
Travis
bigger
and I were
later.
talking about.
I mean, we just got a whole,
Just need a bathroom.
well, that's it, we need a hole in the ground we can swim in,
I
and a
hate to
bathroom.
overhear this all, but 40 by 40 is not that much cheaper. It's the depth is the gradient that it costs. And also, we are required by the Department of Health to put in certain housing for both the public and for the bathrooms. We can't require them to.
I mean, I understand there's things we have to do, but are we at the rock bottom middle now? There's no place else to cut a corner?
Well, I
There's
think
not
we should bring
another,
this up. You know what I mean? Because some of us don't know.
There's a possibility that we could get some,
Oh, no.
Oh, Brian Ralph. I thought it was Ralph. Ralph.
they're using
Brian Ralph.
This is the questions you would ask.
Well, it's just when you said you're finished in 2 years in a row, it's gotta be wet. Good neighbors that worked
Yeah, that'd be great. They'll be back. They love you. They'll be back. Oh, yeah.
I mean, did we even get the bid notice for the people who could make it better?
Right.
I mean, where did we put it?
Tomorrow. Okay, so this is a wash here. Yeah, we'll put it time. Maybe whoever's doing the colors for this year.
Okay, we'll reconvene. Who would like to address the board next? Scott?
I was waiting to see if there was anybody else that wanted to speak first.
I don't see a lot of people jumping off.
I know that a lot of people probably wonder how we got where we are and what has happened, along the way. And, basically I can tell you that part of the problem with this whole pool project is the municipality is trying to build it. And because of that, it is way more difficult in the state of New York for a municipality to go into this project than it would be a private individual. We're forced to pay prevailing wages, and unfortunately Delaware County is wrapped up with counties towards the city as far as what prevailing wages are, so it makes it much more expensive in order for us to do this project. The red tape we've been through, we tried to do a design build, which in my opinion would have benefited the taxpayers, the town, everyone. But in New York State, towns are not allowed to do a design build project. We found that out when we received a letter from a union watchdog group that threatened to sue us if we proceeded. I approached the New York State Attorney General's office. I talked to Association of Towns. Nobody could really give us a straight answer whether we could really do it or not do it. The design build, they said, oh, you could go for it. And, oh, sure, let's just go for it and have the town sued. So that wasn't something we could do. So at that point, we ended up needing to do a complete new redesign, which meant that we had to go back to the architect and spend some more money in order to redesign something that we felt and he felt would fit our budget. Unfortunately, due to some of it is due to the fact that the cost of building materials are more expensive now, due to the fact of all these natural disasters that have happened recently. So that's upped the cost to a lot of things. So that definitely made a difference in where our pricing came in.
Al,
Yes.
can you give us a little history, those of us who are not on the committee, about how much money you've raised so far? What's the deal with the grant?
With Parks and Rec?
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you that Parks and Rec has bent over backwards to work with us. We have extended that grant, which is $200,000. We've become first name basis, Chris and I have, and Scott as well, with Jean, who's worked tirelessly to try to help us do anything she possibly could to make this pool happen. They have, our grant is still with us at the moment, but it is in jeopardy after this year.
So after 2018?
After right now. If we don't do something with the contract, we may not be able to get that renewed again.
And how much have we raised so far?
We, with everything in, and the pledges that are out there that are solid pledges, we're at $1,200,000 and something.
I think it's more like $1.3 million.
Yeah, yeah, right around $1,300,000.
But
And-
that doesn't take out for expenses when you back out everything we paid for.
Right.
2 engineers, 2 architects, 2 designs, all of that stuff has come out of there, so that you have to take that off the top. So I think the end number, we were at like $1,084,000.
I think it's 1,170,069.
Yeah, 1,169,533.47.
Okay,
That's where we are.
that's net.
That's
Yeah.
enough.
And so, you know, those of us who are not on the committee, well, first of all, I want to say thank you to all of the pool committee, because I know that people are fired up because they just want a pool, but, you know, people need to realize that you have all been trying your best to make this happen for our community at no cost, at free for everybody else. But I too am one of those people who really want a pool. And I want to see a pool for my kids before they graduate high school. So, and I'm being serious because this pool started when some people's kids were small.
That's true.
How many years ago did this start?
15.
15, 17? I mean, you know, and I'm not saying that to be rude, I'm just saying it to be honest. But my point is, you know, I don't know what the regulations are, or what is required of us to get the pool and this and that, the red tape, but is there anything we could do that would be less, that's something we could do later? The bathhouse, maybe have a smaller pool, or, you know, I don't know, is there anything you can cut? I'm sure you've talked about all these things, but can you inform us?
Sure. I mean, because again, it's a municipality and we have to meet guidelines with the health department. We cannot build this pool without the bathhouse. This has been discussed. I mean, we've checked with Parks and Rec. That's another issue too, is the way the Parks and Rec's grant was written initially. We're required to do certain things with that grant. So, and part of that is the bathhouse. We do have donations in regards to the bathhouse, which is helping, but it's still not helping enough. So, you know, there's just, and my feeling is right now, we have cut this pool down. If it gets much smaller than it is right now, to me, first of all, I don't think it's gonna save that much money. And secondly, it isn't gonna be something that, it's gonna be like a private pool, you know, somebody's backyard pool. If it, you know, I think we're at that minimum stage we really wanna be.
But you know what, the Delaware Academy pool wasn't that big. For those of us who grew up with that small pool up on the hill, it's better than no pool, in my opinion, and I have small children. And every hot summer day, that's all we wanna do is go to a pool. And we have to drive to Oneonta or Andes or Franklin or Downsville, and it's like, come on, our town's the hub of this county.
Right.
We need to be able to figure out something to get this together. And I want to help, and I'm here to help, and I will put in the time. So I'm telling you guys, we need to figure out what we need to do, because for our community, like, we don't have any restaurants, we don't have a pool, we got to get our stuff together here.
I just want to interject one thing, and not to get off course, but the fact that we're the hub of the county is the core of the problem, because we don't have a tax base that can help support this. So we're talking about less than 30% of the property contributing to this project, and it's a huge problem because we're the hub of the county. So I don't want to take us off course.
So to that point a little bit, like what is the appetite or ability to have some sort of bonding for, I mean, it's 160,000, how much ability do we have to do that?
It's about appetite, it's not about ability, I think.
Our problem is we're already talking about bonding to buy dump trucks, because our two tandems have pretty much reached the end of their useful life. And we've tried to budget for it, repairs have been eating us alive. So we've pretty much reached an agreement, we're gonna check into bonding to buy some equipment.
Mm-hmm.
Our problem was, about 4 years ago, we had an audit by the state. They came back with a report that we were about 2.4 million behind on road maintenance. And we had to raise taxes and fix roads. We had to develop a 5-year plan, which we're, what, 2.5 years into maybe? So we're only halfway through that plan. In the meantime, the old equipment that we got left with is pretty much worn out, because we've been running it all day, every day.
So what type of duration?
If we start bonding for highway equipment, that puts us in a point where we're gonna have to do a serious tax increase, or we're gonna have to not do something. And that's the hard choice we've got, you know, is what are we willing to not do, and what do we feel we have to do, you know, without, you know, saddling the taxpayers with bills they can't pay.
And so when do the bids and the grant and, you know, everything else, like what's kind of the clock on all of those things where it has to either be set in motion or not by a certain time? Sounded like the grant was
The
pretty,
clock's running right now in regards to all of it. I mean, the bids, obviously, we have to get back to the bidders and let them know, you know, they're waiting for an answer from us. They've waited a month already. Bids are generally only good for so long, so,
Is there anything we could take away at this point to make it less?
the problem is when you bid on a municipal bid,
Mhm.
you can't just take things away. We have to take all of these bids and throw them out. We can't just call up the guys and say, hey, dump the kiddie pool, or, you know, change the color of that, you know. It's not legal. So the only way you can do it is to completely throw all these bids out and then go back to bid again. Now,
Which
if
is
we're
a
gonna
whole
make
new
any
set of
changes,
drawings, a whole-
we're gonna have to go back to our architect. We're gonna have to spend more money.
yeah.
I mean, he gave us a deal this last time, thanks to Chris, but he gave us a deal on this next design that we just did. So that was a big break for us. Now, I don't think he's gonna wanna do that again. The man has to be in business, you know, so that's what we're faced with. It's not that simple. You can't just pick up the phone and say, you know, cut this out, do that. If you were a private individual, you could do anything you wanted to do, but we can't, so.
I mean, it sounded like, from what Brian said, that basically the cost of the redesign, the multiple redesigns has kind of eaten away about what the surplus would have been to cover the shortfall that we have right now.
Not
Not
really.
quite,
I mean,
not quite, yeah.
our
Says
architect this
1.3
time
to
cost us
1.1.
$62,000, and the next redesign was 12. So he cut that from 20, gave us a break. So this architect isn't really telling us by any stretch.
The-
Right.
Well, we had the first architect that completely screwed us over,
Yeah.
that the town threatened to sue, and I don't know where
And
that.
the problem with those
but-
plans were
And that
is,
was huge money.
Yeah.
But a lot of the funds were covered by grants, like we had a bonus grant that covered the cost of architectural work, so.
Which I'll let you know, we're still waiting on the
Yeah.
Bonacek money to come in after 3 years.
Exactly.
Just so you know, all we do
It's
is
just
file
constant red
paperwork.
tape.
We still haven't received the grant.
You count that among your hard pledges?
Yes.
the problem with the first
It's
bid,
not a
Yeah.
hard pledge, a pledge not yet received, yeah.
Yeah.
Are there pool companies out there that do this professionally, such and such pool company, that you could just call up a salesman, somebody who's got their own architects and has done multiple pools like this,
That's what we
and
tried
talk to them?
We've already done
We
that.
tried to do that.
Yeah, that's what we were
That's
trying to do
illegal
with the
for
design and build
municipalities.
combination, where we could contact a pool company, they would work with whoever they were comfortable with, give us a design and a price on the pool.
And why doesn't that
Can't
work?
do that.
It's against the law in New York State.
For
To call a salesman?
Yes, it's anything, not only that, this particular project falls into what's called the Wicks law, which in New York State means that each section of this bid has to be bid separately. In other words, the pool, general construction, the electrical portion, and the plumbing portion. All of those pieces have to be bid out separately so that an electrician, and in this case, this is what's happened. We have a general contractor who would build the pool. We have another individual company who will be doing the plumbing, and we have another individual company who would win the bid to do the electrical. So that's required in New York State due to what's called the Wicks law.
Okay, now did you say you were considering at this point a possibility of just quitting?
That's for the committee to decide where they wanna go next. The pool committee is a part of the town. They're a committee of the town that have been working on this. And so that decision would come from them, but at this point, because so many things may be jeopardized in regards to funding, that may be a choice they're gonna have to make.
Now, just for example, if I went to buy a pool for my home and it turned out that it was totally out of my budget and it just wasn't gonna happen, I might decide to put in a sprinkler and a water slide. I mean, I might do something else so my kids can play
Right.
in the backyard. I mean, I know my grandkids love it when I string my hose over the clothesline. They'll play in that for hours. I've been to these splash parks in Virginia and North Carolina with my grandkids, and they've absolutely loved them. I mean, it's not a pool, but if I can't have a pool, I think I could survive with a nice sprinkler and a garden hose. Before, I'd just go sit in my sandbox and cry. And if there is some money that was donated by the people or something, even if it's 300,000 or 400,000, maybe we should think about putting in a splash park down the Legion and a few, new playground toys or something. So there's something down there that we have something, and at least the kids can get wet. I'm thinking of my grandkids; they would rather go to a splash pool down or a splash park down there than have to drive to Oneonta. And if we have $300,000 or $400,000, I think that's doable. Just as compared to just dropping the whole thing and give everyone their money back and continue to drive to Andes.
Here's another thing about that. That has been talked about. It's been a long 15 years, folks.
Yes.
And I want to thank Al and Chris for coming on board and the town for accepting us as a committee. Until that happened, nothing happened. We were lost. And then when this all happened and we became part of the town, I never saw so much red tape my whole life. You talk about learning a lot of things. Al's pointed it out. Al's pointed it out. The business with the sprinkler, yes, we've talked about that as a possibility if this whole thing falls apart. But we still fall under the rules and regulations. You put a sprinkler in, and you still have to have all the chlorinators and all that stuff, and it's still gonna have to go out to bid, and it's still gonna be regulated. So, yep, that would be a good idea, but we still have those steps to go through, huh?
We'd have to reapply for grants.
And we'd have to reapply for all the grants if we needed that extra money to go that step. So I'm kind of lost for words after 15 years.
Well, let me just help you for a moment. I received an important phone call earlier, and I just received a text back from the O'Connor Foundation, and they are donating another $200,000 towards this project.
So we're good to go.
That should be
So,
enough to approve it.
the only question that I have, only because I don't have the numbers to run through my brain, and the board would have to decide that we can use the good neighbor money and the money that we have for the pool, which I don't think will need all of that, but I'm looking at contingencies here.
Well, I think it's very likely that we would need it, probably all of it.
Well, I'm just saying that's a decision that you'll.
You gotta remember, we're government, so it's gonna run over.
Oh, definitely.
But you're just saying now we have the amount of money to cover this.
We have, thank you to the O'Connor Foundation in the last 2 minutes, we have the money to proceed with this pool.
So we're gonna do that? I mean,
Also,
First thing that
one
we need to do, let
I
me
just wanna
explain.
I could buy a car in a deal. This is the car dealer sitting here saying, what do I gotta do to put you in this car today? Well,
Let me explain-
O'Connor Foundation just did it.
Let me explain what the next step is, okay? The low bidder for the project was the Mancini Associates out of Endicott. That bid now needs to be forwarded to Parks and Rec, which is basically a technicality, but we need to forward the bid to them. So what the town board will do tonight is I, as the member of representing the pool committee, will ask for a vote to forward the Mancini bid to Parks and Rec for their approval. If that is approved by Parks and Rec, then the board would award that to them, award them the bid. We also need to forward the electrical bid and the plumbing bid for approval to Parks and Rec. If they all come back approved, then we can go ahead and award those bids.
Wow.
That would be the next step.
I thought they were just in with Parks and Recs being approved.
No, our work had to be approved by Parks and Rec.
Let's take-
Before we
That's
go to
the
bid.
drawings.
Our,
This is the
our
actual
architecture, our architect's work had to be approved first, and by the health department. So it's,
And they approved our part,
yes,
so this should be quicker.
it most likely will
In
be
theory?
because of the relationship we have made
Well,
Very
with,
important.
Let me just interject. This has to do with the bidder and meeting the qualifications as set forth by Parks and Rec,
right,
meeting minority business